And this is the crisis for so many of us as internalized, regressed children that met this point. This part was beginning to come out of our mouth, and Dad froze. And we realized that our entire relationship with Father, the protective power force of the giant, depends on whether we eat those words and go back to sleep. This is why you have Sleeping Beauty. The uninvited guest puts the self to sleep for 100 years, because that which we will not invite into our consciousness, into our guest house — Rumi is the guest house — the uninvited guest becomes the energy we dishonor. And the energy we dishonor at the same moment dishonors us. It's a mutual dishonoring. And the dishonored energy becomes the curse. And the curse puts us to sleep, because all of the nice fairy godmothers and all the little pretty pink dresses for the christening of the new birth, they were culturally sanctioned. The king and the queen invited them, but they didn't invite the misfit. They didn't invite that part that is not fitting into the cult. The old fairy godmother, by naming her witch, by naming her the uninvited one, becomes the curse in the act of not inviting. Because you cannot be cursed by sincerely honoring and inviting someone into the group. Meaning, if you take a terrorist who wants to kill you and blow up and say, we would really appreciate understanding you, why you'd like to blow us up, and you invite that in, and you invite that into dialogue, then you learn about their sister that was blown up by an American tank. Then you learn about the fact that when you were crying, you were knocked out of the way because it looked like you might be huddling a bomb. Then you learn about the fact that your grandmother is in shock and in tears. And then you learn of the fact that the only one that fed your family is a jihadist thing. And you learn this. And this data helps you heal and repair the system that was faulty. The system that wronged that child and wronged that family and wronged that sister and did not repair the damage. And you understand that that hatred is not the enemy, that the enemy is the culture, the environment that creates that hatred and then refuses to repair it. And so you welcome that in. How can we help? How can we honor your family? How can we give your grandmother her dignity? How can we honor your sister? How can we help you out of the sociopathic brainstem that we shoved you in with behaving traumatically and sociopathically to a level that you could not climb out? How can we do it? And this is the terrain of integration. Now the curse that was unconscious, because of course we don't bother to learn any of that, we just call people terrorists and then cause more bombing and stuff and pretend as we generate terrorists by being terrorists. We pretend we're fighting terrorists, just like we pretended that we were fighting drugs by ruining people's lives so that they became more needing of anesthetics. So in other words, we go in and we traumatize and terrorize and humiliate and ruin families over and over again to millions of Americans. And we use racial profiling to make sure that you feel racially inferior. And having successfully elevated the pain to a level that you need an anesthetic, we then pronounce that we are winning a war on anesthetics. while we are adding to the pain that demands an anesthetic. This is absolute stupidity, and it is our cult. Cults are always absolutely stupid, barbaric, insane, idiotic, in the most amazing ways imaginable. And it is stunning that science is not welcomed into these domains. There's no scientist that will say that drugs can even be warred against. How can you war against a substance? No, you are beginning a war with the American people. And then you're extending that war into a war with the world. So you are at war with people, let's be honest. And you are at war with people to get them to take less anesthetics. And you are increasing their pain more than any other source in their lives. Okay? So you're increasing pain while discouraging the use of anesthetics. Is that stupidity? Is that cruelty? Is that a sick joke? Is that barbarity? Is that insanity? I mean, how fucked up do you have to be to go into someone's life, take their knee, bash them over the knee with a hammer, and then say, by the way, there are street anesthetics. We'll never give you anyone. We'll just bash you over the knee with a hammer. There are street anesthetics out there. Don't use them. Feel the pain. And hit them over the kneecap again until the pain is unimaginable, and then leave, and then say, look at what the world's coming to, all this drug use. You know, how dumb do you have to be to play that game with a straight face? You have to be pretty dumb. But that turns, then you get the anger of the cult, It's like, well, there isn't a single president who's left who won't tell the truth. They just won't tell the truth to you when they're trying to get elected. And that's a scary thought, that a president won't tell the truth if they want to be elected, because the people who are electing them want to hear lies. That's a pretty scary thing to think about, to understand that we promote the cult by electing liars because we won't elect truth tellers. It's a pretty scary thing. And why won't we elect the truth tellers? Could it be that at 6 years old we learned that the truth could get us killed? And so we learned that we were safer by creating part of us who would lie, and then create another part of us that would say that that is the truth. Could it be that we have all gone insane in an effort to survive the childhood trauma in a parentally illiterate cult? And we now believe that the only thing that can keep us alive is lying. So we elect lying politicians over and over again who drive us into the ground. But they lie to us in such a nice way, and we feel safe because no one's upset with those lies. And people are incredibly upset with the truth for the implication of change that truth can bring. Of course, the Soviet Union wanted to shut down Solzhenitsyn, and Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago helped to speed up the demise of the Soviet Union. Of course, Obama considers Edward Snowden enemy number one for telling the truth about U.S. intelligence violations of American citizens' human rights and the law. Of course, he's enemy number one guy who told the truth. If Stalin could have shut down the Gulag Archipelago, he would have considered Solzhenitsyn enemy number one. The cult is friendly to whatever lie will perpetuate its existence. The truth is the enemy of every cult power structure that is not scientifically based. The truth is the friend of consciousness that is seeking to grow and evolve, which puts the cult and spirituality and growth in a direct head-on collision course. Because spirituality is about inviting each individual to know not only the truth, but their highest truth. And the cult is about poisoning and punishing and traumatizing every individual as they get near the truths that might destabilize the status quo. And so this is ultimately, it's not a tension between science and spirituality. There is no tension between mathematics and science, between spirituality and mathematics, between well-being and science. There is no tension between well-being and science, mathematics and science, mathematics and well-being. These are technologies that can naturally be used to create well-being. There is an incredible tension between sanity, love, science, mathematics, and consciousness, and existing cult-based power structure. And what makes something a cult as opposed to a science is that it is self-referential. It will not go outside of its circle. It will not go outside of its circle in order to invite and correlate its dogma with outside information. It will die in many cases or go to war in many cases rather than surrender its dogma and on the altar of humility, on the altar of science, to actually learn what works. You know, you won't have that many people who are arguing in politics about this agree to sponsor a group of 100 people to do a scientific experiment. Okay, you think welfare is ruining women's lives and da-da-da-da-da. Let's take 100 women and group them together and give them no support. And then let's take this other group of 100 women and that all have children and give them support. And then let's look at the quality of how many, do the people who get no support pay more taxes in 10 years than the people who got support? Let's do the science with a sample of just a fucking 100 people, please. No. We don't want to muddy the dogma with facts. We don't want to create real people. We just want to talk about the hypothetical and the this and that and the other, and it doesn't work very well. Milton Friedman is not acknowledging the actual facts in Denmark, where you have an incredibly high tax load and you have a 400% higher quality of life than the average American. He's not acknowledging those facts. He's acknowledging other facts, just not those facts. And so it's terrific arguments. They're fabulous. They just don't incorporate an entire country, an entire region of countries that have more billionaires per capita, higher quality of life, lower quality of trauma, lower homelessness, no poverty and starvation, incredible levels of college education, high levels of competent employment, high minimum wage. None of that fits into Milton's model. Now, Milton has a fabulous set of models. I really enjoy listening to him speak, and there's an incredible amount of integrity there. It's just, let's just ignore Scandinavia. It doesn't fit into the model, so let's just not talk about it. And that's, that's a weakness. That's when dogma stops being scientific. Now, if Milton can untangle his own thing in Denmark and spend 6 months talking with real human beings, who most of them seem much happier than Milton does, then that's worth noting. So on this wheel, we have all of our feelings in our psyche, in our conscious, in our probability field, all of our feelings, past and present. We have all of our thoughts, past and present. We have all of our beliefs, past and present. We have all the things the cult has told us not to talk about that are taboo. We have all of our traumas in various dissociated states. And in order for life to move, this wheel turns and must turn. This wheel turns and must turn. And in order for this wheel to turn, we have to come to consciousness. We have to let that energy come into language in our minds, and we have to own it. I began this video because I'm doing work on forgiveness and looking at what stops me and what stops us as a culture from forgiving. Because in order to forgive something, you have to integrate it. It has to become conscious. You have to process the energy, the action, the memory through a filter of some paradigm that says it's good or it's bad or whatever, but it's usually something that's painful on some level. The forgiving myself for breaking my elbow. You can say, oh, but there were roles that I played in that. My landlord is cheap and doesn't like getting any help, and so he showed up as often he does without any help, and then am I going to refuse him help? I don't want to be carrying a heavy washing machine down long concrete stairs just because my landlord is too cheap to buy a new one or too cheap to arrive with help and doesn't have the right equipment. But, so there's a part of me trying to be nice so I can be accepted and loved as opposed to intelligent. Saying, in fact, I said to him, Billy, this is a joke. Let's get some guys in here. We need 4 people. Let's do this later. No, we got to do this now. It's like, okay. I went along with his stupidity. And when the washing machine fell down the stairs and chased me, landing on concrete, I feel sad. I feel sad. I've denied my wife of my full energy. I've denied my finances, my full ability to work. I've denied and hurt a lot of things by going along with my landlord's stupidity. And that's something that I need to forgive. Forgive my landlord for being so cheap and idiotic in these areas. Forgive myself for going along with it. And I was nice to him also. I said, do you want me to go on the lower side or the upper side? He had a bad back, so I took the risky side to help his back. So he's doing the thing. First he's too cheap to get help, then he's is bad. It's a joke. It's a complete joke. And yet that's, and there's the pain. All of this pain to be nice, to an idiot in this arena. But how do I deal with that? What has to come to consciousness? What feelings? Is it okay for a spiritual person to call someone an idiot or whatever? What is an idiot? Someone that makes the things worse when they have a much easier opportunity to make things better. I mean, that's one reasonable definition. And if we're going to have people that do that, and if we do that at times, we've got to have a name for it. Is that judgmental? All these little things that are cult-based in the spiritual cult of what it is to be spiritual and not spiritual and all that, and better than the next spiritual person. I'm better than you because I didn't judge you, only I'm judging you that I'm better than you. And so when we get stuck at these points, the whole bicycle has to stop. Or we go a bit crazy. It's like, how are we going to get this bit smuggled past this bit of the road where the consciousness exists? Because that's where it hits the road. Where the rubber hits the road, that's when it becomes manifest, become conscious. How are we going to get from here over to this point without noticing? Oh, I know, we'll create a crisis. We'll behave all bizarrely, and then we get past the moment. It's like, oh, okay, fine. I obscured my consciousness so frenetically with addiction, and I watched 3 hours of porn, then I drank a beer, then I binged watched Netflix, and by the time it had passed through, I made it through without acknowledging the truth. I made it through, and this is where so much of compulsion comes in. When there's a pain that's too big to feel, when there's a trauma that's too big to face, when there's something that feels unforgivable, when there is a thought that everyone would persecute us if we had that thought. When there was, this thing and this thing and this thing, and it's absolutely taboo. How can we transition with grace when we have these fixations, these secrets, these taboos, these walls, these lies? And ultimately, the transcendence is through science. The transcendence is through science. If you don't want pedophiles, don't create a culture that is conducive to X percentage of pedophiles. No. This is our culture. This is our culture. And it has nothing to do with pedophiles. Pedophiles are just bad people that magically come out of nowhere and are horrible people and must be punished. And that's all there is to it. It's like, how's that working out? Is pedophilia going down? Do you feel noble and righteous when the next little girl comes to you and talks about this, or the next little boy? Do you feel noble and righteous because you hate pedophiles? Do you hate pedophiles, or do you love children and human beings enough to create a culture that does not produce pedophilia and that heals the darkest wounds of pedophilia in the pedophile and the pedophilic victim? They are connected, by the way. Meaning if you make pedophilia worse in the pedophile while claiming to be protecting the victim, you are actually betraying the victim. And you actually have to study the science. I don't want to study the science. I just want to hate someone. I just want to judge and hate someone. Yeah, that's what you want to do. And the cult supports that, doesn't it? Those are the bad guys. Kill them, lynch them, get them, right? Burn the witches, right? The cult supports it because it's an idiot. It's not scientifically based. If you understand the variables that cause something at a statistical level, we cause cancer all the time. We just say it's not at statistically high levels. This is a safe air level. We produce toxins in the air constantly while saying we want to be healthy. But we say, they're not statistically significant, just like the tobacco industry insisted that, oh, sure, tobacco and smoke is not good for the lungs, but it's not significant. It's not significant. And so there's no reason to believe that putting large amounts of smoke into the lungs would damage the lungs in any way whatsoever. And if it is, it's a very, 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 very tiny thing. And there's no reason to believe that maintaining a protocol of emotional illiteracy in emotional science and psychological illiteracy has anything to do at all with the amount of violence in our culture. No, nothing. It's like, I'm sure if everyone understood all of their feelings, knew how to talk about them, lifted shame about having feelings, learned a variety of conflict resolution tools, understood trauma, understood intergenerational abuse systems, knew how to lift shame about that, that would have absolutely no bearing on our culture. So why do I have anything to do with the pedophile when I haven't protested the school department about that, or done a blog about this, or decided to teach some children how to be aware of their feelings? Why do I have anything to do with it? I'm just doing my job in the cult, which is to not think. and perpetuate the status quo. So notice what you think. Notice what you feel. Notice how much hatred you have at the part in me that tells the truth. Notice how much enjoyment you have at the part of me that tells the truth. Notice which parts of you hate and attack and want to get at and pull down and destroy because they are the internalized abuser. That's the part that came at you when you told the truth. Notice that. What's your relationship with truth inside and out? Most kings, if they can get away with it, cut off the head of the messenger who tells them anything they don't want to hear, which is why the jester is so important. The thing to understand is that all disease comes when the wheel stops. And many of us find ourselves in the crisis of deciding whether to stop our own wheel and create walls and partitions to protect the culture from its own fear of itself and of the truth, or to let our wheels flow and celebrate the truth and beauty of life, etc., and as it is, and just stay kind of below the radar. So you have a low profile, below the radar kind of dynamic. You have a confrontation with the cult dynamic, in which case you have to decide whether you'll be more traumatized by being stuck in a place where you can't integrate, where you can't feel, think, and know what you feel. You can't integrate, and so you can't move and be at respect and honor yourself. Yourself, not the cultish ego, yourself. You can't respect and honor yourself. And I just want to pause and acknowledge an awareness of hostility, an awareness of whether it's envy, hostility, rage, an energy that wants to cut this part of me down. That's both within and without. And I also want to acknowledge that a 14-year-old exposed to a video like this is going to be more empowered in 2.5 hours than just about any single movie that they could watch on TV or in any blockbuster theater. And I want to acknowledge that a majority of parents who, if exposed to this video, and if they made it this far, and if they thought there was something to it, would still not invite their children to think and learn and talk about these ideas, because it might upset the apple cart a bit at home, which is where the cult begins. And it creates a situation where it has to be a betrayal and rebellion, often a violent rebellion in a sense of deep grief and betrayal, in which a child stumbles into some parts of these stuff and is often alone, as opposed to being able to rely on one's elders to take one into this landscape of truth, into this landscape of the beauty, the symmetry, the mathematics, the science of truth, and the grace that that can bring to the future, to the present moment, the grace, the healing, the symmetry that that can bring to the moment. So here we are. Thank you.